Hey guys, it's Will. Just wanted to give you my thoughts on Bitcoin as of today. It's January 22nd, 2018. Give you just my thoughts on what I'm thinking about Bitcoin, and I might mention some other ones. But one of the mistakes, I guess you could say, that I made initially was I was just looking at the price, and in isolation. Like I look at 10,000. People are saying it's going to go up to whatever, or it went down a bit, so now it's only so much. And this wasn't the greatest way to think about things, because there's no sense of the history and the trends that are happening. And some of the way you think about stuff is going to depend on if you're short term or long term. Like if you're more of a trader and you just want to make some money, try to make money, or if you believe in the technology and you want to hold long term. So instead of looking just at the price by itself, you can look at graphs. If you go to TradingView is one place. You can also, because a lot of people don't have eToro access in the States, and if we go to TradingView and we look at Bitcoin, in December it reached upwards of 20,000, depending on which exchange you're looking at, and then it tanked quite a bit here. And I drew some lines which are sort of like trend lines, across the top, or you can draw them on the bottom, and you can see that obviously when it comes back up, it hits another high point, but it's lower than the last high point. Comes down, goes back up, is another lower high. So each high is lower and lower, and then it tanks quite a bit, bounces back up. You can see this is even lower than the previous one, and then eventually it'll break up for a bit, and then so you can see there's been some pretty bad downturns. Now, if you looked at just this little section, there's an uptrend you could have drawn, and then it breaks through that. But some people have talked about this funnel or pennant. It's like a squeezing. This is coming down, that's going up, and then it breaks out. And it went up again to 17, which was looking pretty good, because the high was 20. It's good. Hey, we're going back up again. And this was even higher than the last high, which was a good sign. But then it just dropped. And of course, there's news and different things with China and different things about blocking currencies and banning them and stuff like that. But if we look, so there's depends on how, if you zoom, it can be tricky, because if you're looking, say you look like this, right? This is a downward trend, right? Even just in that section. If we go back even further, this is like, I drew this line down here. This hit a new low on the 18th. And so right now it's kind of in between here, and people are saying 9,000 is kind of a support level. So it could bounce off the 9, but if it breaks through the 9, then it could go down quite a bit more. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. Sometimes there's a thing called swing trading, where you see there's a downward trend and you do a short-term trade, and that can get tricky because people have to put in stop losses and stuff, but which you can't do in a lot of places. Like once a stock drops below a certain point, you'd have to sell it, but that means monitoring it, and a lot of these sites don't have anything like that where to automatically sell if it hits a point. I was using eToro, and they actually stopped the stop losses, so it's dropped so fast or without a lot of volume, and they can't guarantee that it's going to be able to sell it for you, so you don't even have the ability to sell if it drops below a certain point. But anyways, your mindset can really determine what you're thinking here, because initially everything was going up, and John McAfee was saying it was going to hit 500,000 or $1 million per Bitcoin, and long term, you don't know really what's going to happen, because people are trying to evaluate what the price should be based on fiat currencies and gold and stuff like that. But it's really difficult. And right now, this is a negative trend, in my opinion. So if you're really long term, and you could, I'm not giving investment advice, obviously, but one philosophy would be to buy. I bought in around the 10,000 mark because I do think so now we look at the technology. There's SegWit, which is they're trying to get adopted onto various exchanges, and that's going to help speed things up. And there's also Lightning Network, and I think there's debates on that, but I think that's going to make things a lot better. So right now, from what I can gather, the sentiment about Bitcoin is negative because they think it was the initial currency, crypto, and it basically is outdated and slow and expensive, and all these new technologies are going to come along and do even better. And people look at the price and they think it's really expensive and they want to own a whole Bitcoin, so they go to buy like a penny stock sort of thing, like a cryptocurrency that's under $1 because they think it can go up more, but the risk is pretty high. And so it's not easy to figure out, and nobody really knows what cryptos are going to be successful. So you have to watch. Like I kind of parallel this to the internet, early internet. And, MySpace came out, but then eventually Facebook took over. So there could be new companies coming in that do even better. They kind of learn from the past. And new technologies, like I said, with the Lightning Network or something else comes along. The more you look into blockchain, it's a rabbit hole. There's IOTA, like there's Tangle, there's different ways of solving some of these issues. Proof of work, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake. And so you really got to watch. But one of the things that I'm trying to do anyways, is focus on cryptos that I believe in and that I even use. So when I invested in the stock market, people talk about mining stocks, gold mining or something, all these speculative things. And what I eventually sort of honed in on were companies that I really understood and believed in, and I would use them in good times and bad. So that's like, everybody needs shampoo and soap and toilet paper and food. And so, these are the things that you can relate to. You need energy, electricity or gas to drive around. You need, you're still going to have a bank and put money in the bank. And so I basically bought stocks that paid a dividend, but also that I understood in terms of everyday use. So with crypto, right now, I like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Ethereum's a platform for writing smart contracts, and a lot of tokens, a lot of other ICOs like initial coin offerings are based off of Ethereum. So that's the platform in a sense. And Bitcoin is used, a lot of the big companies and banks are using crypto, Bitcoin as one of the initial, like there's a Bitcoin investment trust and some of these things on some of the exchanges. And so that's kind of the big daddy, and I still think that they're going to come back in the future sometime. And so Bitcoin, Ethereum, try to look at things that you might use. So another one that I like is Steam, which is the currency, but Steemit is a website kind of like your simple version of Facebook or Reddit, where you can upvote stuff, you can post content. And so if you're going to buy a token or some sort of cryptocurrency, you can think about something that you're actually going to use. So instead of totally focusing on the investment future, possibility of making money, is think about tokens that you would use. So this is when you use Steem and Steem dollars, you're voting, you have a certain amount of influence, and you can vote posts up, but you can share them. If you post things, you get some dollars, Steem dollars for that. So that's kind of like an ecosystem that the tokens actually make sense because you're going to own them. Now, if you look at something like Ripple, which are used by banks, apparently, you're not really, as an individual, you don't really need to own the token. There's really no need for the token, other than right now people hope it goes up and they're going to make money on it. But for as an individual, you're likely not going to need the token. Like Bitcoin in the future, and over time, you could be buying and selling things with Bitcoin if the price eventually stabilizes. You might be buying certain things, and there'll be more payments accepted with Bitcoin. And so one way to look at it is to focus on cryptos that you might use. There's other ones that I'm not going to mention, but you can look into them. And if you end up thinking, yeah, I should buy this token because it's going to be useful to me, and some of the sort of think about what they're solving, what problem they're solving. Like right now, people don't like the fact that in the case of currency, like when you send money to somebody, it costs a lot of money, and the banks, it's centralized and it takes a long time. Now, even though people complain about Bitcoin, they are trying to solve, and other currencies are trying to solve this issue where you can send money to anybody fairly quickly. And other problems they're trying to solve are something like centralization. Like if you look at social media, YouTube and Twitter and Patreon and stuff like that, they're actually shutting down certain channels because they don't like the content. And so people want that control. They don't want to be able to have somebody shut down their account. The other thing is with YouTube, they are using advertisers to put on videos. Like they put ads on videos, and you get a percentage of that money if you're a video producer. But they can turn that off, demonetize your site, and people don't like that either. That you advertisers won't want to put their ads on your channel or your videos. And then Facebook is limiting and restricting the posts that you're shown, especially if you're a business. And so they're wanting you to pay to get your post in front of people. So what happens with like places like Steemit is the community sort of shares in the ecosystem, and the money is sort of floating around based on certain influencers. And when you share and vote up things, that person gets money from all of us rather than from an advertiser. And so the decentralization and giving the power to the community is something that you could look at as well. And then like what I like about Steemit as well is it's actually a functioning product. Now there are problems, like, they've had a lot of issues, but like if you want to look at currencies that are actually being used and functioning today, that's something to think about as well, because some of the companies, they have white papers and stuff like that. Not companies, but the founders or the people that are developing the crypto. A lot of them don't have an actual product at this point, so the risk is higher. Let's put it that way. So there's different stages, and if the more you see things being used, like Steemit, for example, the more confidence that you have that it's going to be useful. But the crypto that you buy, when you buy Steem, you can move that into Steem Power, and it actually gives you more influence in that community. So it's a different way to think about crypto instead of just I'm going to buy it and sell it in the future for more money. So it's not all about turning the money back into the crypto into fiat currency like US dollars in the future. That's a mindset that eventually hopefully will diminish. When you have things in like say Bitcoin, you'll be able to buy something tangible with that. So there's going to be a lot of communities with their own cryptocurrencies, and you'll be able to, there's this thing called atomic swaps. You'll be able to, and you are able right now, but it's getting started, to swap. So if you have Ether like or Steem or Litecoin, you'd be able to swap for some other currency without these centralized exchanges. So there's going to be a lot of, it's kind of like if you had air miles and you wanted something else, you could exchange it. and or you could even turn it in for real products, like tangible assets. So it's still early on, and there's lots of time, and things are going to go up and down. And I'm trying to, right now, like 10,000 seems kind of cheap relative to 20,000, but it could also go down a lot more. So you don't want to like put all your money in that you have right at the 10,000, because it could go down even lower, and then you could buy some more. So you want to buy, it's almost like dollar cost averaging, buy a little bit here, buy a little bit there. And usually during the drops, like if it's up at 20,000, it's at the highest it's ever been, you don't want to be buying. And if you see this downward trend here coming down, you probably don't want to be buying in there. You want to let it settle down and see it start to recover. So, you might be buying in at different times. You're not going to get the exact low, but you might be buying when you see things like right around here, it's squeezing down. If you drew a line here, like this is coming down, it's going up, and then boom, breaks out. Then you have another squeeze, and then it breaks out. And that sort of, you could be doing that like with this little range right now. You could say, draw a line like this, and see if it sort of does this, and maybe it'll break out again, or it could break down. You don't know. Not sure what's going to happen. So anyways, just a bunch of discussions about what I'm thinking. It's generally, just to summarize, it's a bearish scenario in general, but I believe in Bitcoin. I really think it's going to come back at some point with some of the technology. Everyone's focused on the altcoins because they're cheaper and more exciting, and some of the problems that Bitcoin's having. And I think that when some of the stuff like Lightning Network gets more exposure and gets out there, it's gonna really ramp up again. That's just my feeling. But there's uncertainty out there. There's certain regulations in China and different things. So it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. But if you just keep your eye on things, and you'll see certain teams like Cardano and EOS is another one. They even said today that you shouldn't buy EOS as a token unless you're going to use it. Don't buy it as an investment. So it's good to just keep on Twitter and watch these guys who are in the various teams, and sort of keep an eye out, and don't get greedy and sort of focus on instant money. Now, there's a short term, you could take a little bit of your money and use it on shorter term trades, but that's just based on trends, and that you don't want to be chasing all these pump and dump schemes, and all these YouTubers who are talking about different coins one day to the next can get overwhelming and stressful, because you're just not able to buy everything, and you're missing out on all these riches that people are talking about, and it's kind of stressful that way. So I just go back to the fundamentals and look at the technologies and which ones are being used and performing well over time, and that's kind of how I base my decisions on. So most of my investment right now is in Bitcoin. I still have money on the side because I had to shut down my eToro account, and I've got money on the side that I'm going to be putting in over time as things progress. Right now, it's still a little bit iffy if things are going to drop. I bought in already, like I said, at 10,000. It could go down more, and I might buy some more then. If it starts going up and looks like we're out of the woods, then you might buy in, and it might be a bit higher price, but at least you'll be seeing that trend going upward. So it's not looking great overall right now, but hopefully it'll pick up. So all right, guys, we'll talk to you later.